I don't. Well, is religion not all contradictory?
Well, we can get to that. But I'm just saying, what I'd like to do is, because I think it's nice
I think that it is possible.
Okay, so you think it's possible that God created you without reason, and it's also possible that God created you with reason simultaneously at the same time.
Who is God?
Yeah, this
Who is God?
I think I'd like to have the discussion with them, if that's okay.
I'd like to join in, if you don't mind.
What it is
if you like to have a discussion, if you like to have a private discussion, go home. When you are here, everybody can join the discussion.
We're trying to have a conversation with the flow of a particular point.
Okay.
When 4 people or 3 people join, it loses its flow. That's what I'm saying. I don't mean any disrespect.
I just asked the question.
Sir, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. Even if it's for an hour or 2 hours, it's fine. But this young lady is very intelligent. I think she's quite capable of making her own decisions
Nobody
and asking her
made
questions.
any issues of who's intelligent, who is not.
Sorry, sister, what was your name?
Layla.
Layla. My name is Abass. My surname is actually very similar to your name.
Layla.
It's Lala. But
Okay.
anyway, look. So what I asked you was, is it possible that God created you for a reason?
When you use a word, you have to know the meaning of it. Who is God?
As a potential truth.
Yeah.
And is it possible to simultaneously God creating you without any reason?
I think there's so many. If religion doesn't, for me personally, religion doesn't have a
discussion, we'll go home. Here,
one basis. It can't be all put into the same pot.
I understand. I'm not talking about religion at the moment.
Okay.
I'm just talking about first principles.
Okay.
Can
you use a different analogy then? It doesn't have anything to do
You're
with
wearing
religion.
a green and a yellow t-shirt, right? If I said that t-shirt is pink and somebody else said it's green and yellow, could both positions be equitable? Could they both be correct?
Well, scientifically speaking, yes, because we see things, we can see things differently. Everyone can see things differently.
Right, okay. So if somebody's colorblind, they will see the colors differently.
Yeah.
But what's the reality? What color are you wearing?
In this reality,
yes.
I guess, yeah.
It's a green and a yellow t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
So if there's a deficiency in somebody's ability to assess the colors, then of course they could come up with a different color.
I'm going to say that it is. I'm not going to budge on my that it is possible.
I would say, Layla, you don't live your life like that. I would say when you make decisions, you base them on balance of probability, and you go with a probabilistic analysis of everything you do. So today you wore that t-shirt, looking at possibly what the weather might look like, and you assess if it was raining and it was very cold, you probably would have put a coat on and an umbrella, because you would have realized that even though you haven't felt the temperature and you haven't got wet.
But that's me, but not people. Not everybody lives their lives.
I understand, but that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm trying to make to you is that
I genuinely believe that reality is interpreted. That's my.
Okay, but then you have a grasp on nothing in life. Absolutely anything. There is no this is not a microphone.
Well, no, it is.
This is not the ground. That's not a tree. Those are not clouds.
But the first question you asked me was, could there be two realities of two contradictory realities of God? Yes, I believe that, because in reality, is it reality?
So that's a separate issue.
But is it reality?
No, but
I can't tell. I can't say if something is contradictory if the sub-basis of it isn't reality.
Okay, so that I also covered that.
Okay.
Because I said to you, either one of them is wrong.
Okay, I believe
or both of them are wrong.
I believe that if there is proof and data to back it up, then yes, there is reality. But if you're trying to deconstruct idea that is not reality based, then there can be contradictions in that non-reality based situation.
Right, because you're assuming that it's a non-reality.
Yeah.
But if one of the two is a reality, if one of the two is, if I use the word is, then logically one of them has to be right.
Yeah. Okay.
And if there's no evidence for either position, they could both be wrong.
Yeah.
But they cannot both be right. That's the point I'm trying to make to you. I think that's fair, right? Yeah. Okay. So when I asked you about evidence, and I said to you, what type of evidence would actually convince you of a particular religion? The reason why I asked you that is because unless you have some criteria, then when you see something, how would you know that that is something that is evidence or not evidence?
Well, there is like data that is collected by individual humans, or there's data that is collected on large scales, scientifically done with the scientific method that becomes in proving it either theoretically or proving it in reality.
Are there things that are provable without using science?
Yes, but behind those bases of proving them, there lies science.
Okay.
So gravity, you can prove science and you don't need to know anything about gravity, and you say, I dropped this, that's gravity.
Right, okay. So, in other words, somebody saying that gravity exists, this thing falls, without even the theory of gravity being established, that was still a reality, that was still the truth, right? Without evidence, right? Do you believe that your mother is your mother?
Yes.
Are you convinced of that?
I'm very convinced of that.
Have you taken a DNA test?
No, I look at spitting image like my mum.
Okay, so there's reasons why you believe.
There's photos.
Yeah, you know. So there's collaborating reasons as to why you believe something to be fairly certain.
We have the same genetic disorder.
Well, yeah, so these are reasons, right?
Those are,
Could they all potentially be coincidences, though?
No.
Potentially?
No.
Why not?
Because she is my mother.
But you haven't got evidence. There's no analytical scientific evidence.
I would say that my parents consummating would be evidence.
No, but you haven't seen that.
No, I don't. Yeah,
There's no science that's analysed that.
Okay, but
look,
you're breaking down like a very small thing.
No, but Layla, why? I'm not trying to I'm not trying to do that.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do is that I'm just trying to say, look, we as human beings are overwhelmingly convinced about certain positions that actually have not been established through science or analytical or empirical evidence. That's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is that...
Okay, but there's a difference between that specific evidence. Like, I grew up with my mother. I have the same genetic disorder which can only be passed through genes. It is not a coincidence, unfortunately, the way the genetics work. And you can trace those genes back, and it cannot happen.
I understand.
If you are not...
Do other people have that disorder?
Yeah.
So potentially you could be a daughter of somebody else who has that disorder.
I've never met anyone with...
I accept it's far-fetched.
You're breaking down something that... Use a better...
All I'm doing, Layla, I'm
I'm
establishing to you that you believe
that my mother is my mother.
You believe certain things on balance of probability without adopting the scientific method of analytical and empirical evidence. That's all I'm saying to you.
I've given you scientific, analytical.
No, you haven't.
I did. I said that
because you have to do a DNA test to prove it.
You also don't need to have to do a DNA test.
I agree.
To prove that you are a parent.
I agree.
There's no way that you can have a different blood type or a different similarity blood type to your parent.
Layla, I agree with you. This is not an argument against what you're saying. All I'm saying to you is, you mentioned to me
that I believe my mother is my mother.
No, that it has to be scientifically proven for something to be true.
I didn't. I said for me personally.
Well, I
don't think that everyone else should live that way.
Because your personal opinion is that it's only provable if it's scientifically backed.
Yeah, that's my personal opinion.
And all I'm trying to explain to you is that as human beings, we accumulate balance of probability with things like our mother is our mother, our father is our father, brother is our brother, whatever it might be. I'm just trying to say to you that we haven't taken the analytical or empirical evidence to establish that, but we have good reasons. I'm not saying there aren't good reasons.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying that your stance, therefore, is somehow incorrect. It's what we all are like, basically.
Yeah, so I just think the comparison, you should have used something that is less...
Well, maybe I'm not very good at using comparisons.
Okay.
So maybe I'm not very good at that, and I picked that one. Okay. Now, the thing that I'm going to ask you now is this.
Okay.
Because you do like science, as do I, right? I think it's an amazing field which tells us how things work, and I think certainly we've We've done a lot with science in terms of bettering the world, etc. I agree, right? Okay. Now, do you believe that the universe exists?
The universe exists.
Is this real, what you see here?
Yes,
okay.
I do believe that.
And do you believe that anything that exists that is contingent, i.e. reliant on something else, so it requires certain chemicals, compounds, whatever it might be, it needs to be assembled in a particular way for it to function in the way that it functions, does that require an explanation of where it came from?
Yeah, if you want one.
No, wanting and not wanting is a separate thing. I'm saying to you as a person, something that's contingent, reliant on something else for its existence, does it require an explanation as to where it may have come from?
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think the possibilities might be that give birth to this universe? So could it be a material cause, i.e. some other type of universe or some other type of energy or some other type of matter? Or could it be something perhaps outside of what we understand in science, something metaphysical, like a creator or whatever it might be?
I think that we do not have enough evidence to say what is what. There's over 100 theories on universe infancy and how all the atoms and the gases and the elements came to be.
Are they all material explanations?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I've covered that.
Yeah.
So either it has a material explanation or it has an immaterial explanation.
Yeah,
Would you say there's any other possibilities?
I think there's probably many that we haven't thought of, yeah. And I'm sure that it's
Can you think of any at all? Material or non-material?
Well, can you think of any other ones?
No.
No. Well, yeah, no.
No, okay. So let's have a look at the material explanation for the universe. If there's a material explanation for the universe, it requires an explanation.
Yeah.
And if that has a material explanation for its existence, it requires an explanation.
Yeah.
If you were to go back infinitely, material steps or material explanations, if you had to traverse an infinite series of anything, can you ever traverse it? Can you ever get to the end?
I don't think we can know that.
Infinite, uncountable. That's what infinite means.
Yeah.